My son screamed across the wedding hall, his voice shaking the chandeliers. "You ruined my wedding, Mom. You're jealous of my bride." And the strangest part? I was wearing the cream dress he told me to wear. That moment changed everything. I left quietly, holding back tears, not knowing that months later, that same son would call me, sobbing into the phone saying, "Mom, she took everything, our money, our home, our future. She's gone." This isn't just a story about a mother and a son. It's about betrayal, control, and the price of blind love. How does a woman go from being called jealous to being the only one who saw the truth coming? How does a perfect bride turn out to be the storm no one expected? By the end of this story, you'll question who the real villain is, the one who lied or the one who stayed silent. Because sometimes silence isn't weakness, it's survival. Stay with me till the end. Because the moment you think you know what happened, the truth will hit harder than you expect. Before we start the story, comment below and tell me where in the world you're watching from today. And if you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell icon so you never miss new stories like this one. At the wedding, everything looked like a dream. The hall was filled with soft golden lights, flowers lined the aisles, and laughter floated in the air. I stood at the back, holding my small clutch, smiling at my son Ethan as he waited for his bride. I wore the dress he had picked for me himself, a soft cream color, simple but elegant. A week earlier, he had texted me saying, "Mom, wear the cream one, not the blue. It matches the theme." I had smiled at that message, touched that he cared about such details. But when I walked into the hall that afternoon, the bride's family looked at me as if I had broken a rule no one told me about. The ceremony went on until the reception started. Guests were dancing, cameras were flashing, and I stood by the corner with Aunt Carla, watching my son laugh. Then, like a sudden crack in the air, his voice echoed across the hall. "Mom, how could you? You ruined the wedding." The crowd went quiet. I froze. Everyone's eyes turned toward me. Ethan's face was red with anger. "You wore white! You embarrassed Lena on her day." My mouth went dry. I looked down at my dress, the same cream one he had approved. The lighting made it look lighter, but it was not white. My throat tightened as whispers spread around the tables. I tried to explain softly at first. "Ethan, you told me to wear this one. It's cream." But Lena was crying in her chair, surrounded by her friends, shaking her head like I had committed an unforgivable sin. "You're jealous," Ethan said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You always wanted attention." I felt a wave of heat rush through me. Jealous? Of a wedding? Of my own son's happiness? The pain hit harder than his words. I didn't argue. I simply turned around, walked out of the hall, and left my half-finished drink on the table. My heels clicked against the floor, the sound echoing louder than the music that had stopped behind me. Outside, the night air was cold. I could still hear the laughter starting again behind the closed doors. My car keys shook in my hand as I got inside. I wanted to cry, but I couldn't. I sat there, staring at the bouquet I had brought as a gift for Lena. White lilies, her favorite. I had chosen them thinking she'd smile. Instead, I felt like an intruder in my own child's joy. On the drive home, my phone buzzed with notifications, messages from relatives telling me I should have known better, that wearing white to a wedding was bad taste. None of them asked for my side. When I reached home, the house felt too quiet. I took off the cream dress and hung it neatly in the closet. I thought of deleting Ethan's text asking me to wear it, but something stopped me. I kept it. A mother's instinct, maybe. I made myself some tea but couldn't drink it. My son had looked at me like I was the enemy, and I couldn't understand why. Maybe it wasn't just the color. Maybe someone had fed him that anger, drop by drop. I didn't know it then, but that night was not the end of the story. It was the beginning of something far darker. The days after the wedding felt like walking through fog. Ethan didn't call, not even to ask if I reached home safely. The silence between us grew heavy, and every time I thought of his angry face, my chest tightened. I told myself he was just embarrassed, that maybe Lena had misunderstood the dress color and he was caught between us. Still, something about that night didn't sit right. My sister Carla dropped by with leftover cake from the wedding and said softly, "You know, that girl has a temper. I saw how she whispered to Ethan before he shouted at you. It wasn't his idea." Her words sank into me like stones. I didn't want to believe Lena could turn my own son against me, but strange things started to happen. Ethan unfollowed me on social media. His profile photo changed to one of him and Lena with the caption, "Finally away from negativity." A few of our relatives liked it. My stomach turned. I wasn't angry, just hollow. I opened our old chat, scrolled up to the message where he had written, "Mom, wear the cream one." I took a screenshot and saved it, though I didn't know why. Maybe part of me needed proof that I hadn't imagined everything. Weeks passed. Sometimes I saw Lena's name in the news feed, tagged in fancy dinners, spa trips, weekend getaways. Ethan looked thinner in each picture, his smile fading a little every time. One afternoon, Aunt Carla called, her voice nervous. "You won't believe this, but I overheard Lena bragging at the salon that she's teaching Ethan to cut off old habits. She said even his family counts as one." I froze, my hands still in the dishwater. "Old habits," she said again. The words echoed in my head all evening. I sent Ethan a simple message that night. "I hope you're happy, son. I'll always be here if you need me." He didn't reply, but the message showed red. For the first time, I felt something was seriously wrong. He wasn't just distant. He was isolated. Lena had wrapped herself around his life so tightly that he couldn't see the walls closing in. And while he was falling deeper under her spell, I started noticing small hints, tiny cracks she didn't cover well. A friend of mine worked at the local bank and casually mentioned that Ethan and his wife had opened a joint account, but all the transactions looked like luxury spending. Designer handbags, spa memberships, weekend stays. Ethan's salary could never stretch that far. I tried to call him again. No answer. Then, one evening, I saw a message from an unknown number. It was short. "She's not who you think she is." There was no name, no context, and before I could reply, the message disappeared. I saved the number anyway, labeling it unknown tip. My gut twisted. I didn't know what was coming, but I could feel that the storm that started at that wedding wasn't over. It was only gathering strength. A month later, I met Ethan by accident at the grocery store. He looked tired, his shirt wrinkled, dark circles under his eyes. He tried to smile, but it didn't reach his face. "Hey, Mom," he said softly, almost like he wasn't sure if he should talk to me. I wanted to hug him, but I held myself back. "You look thin, Ethan. Are you eating well?" He nodded quickly and grabbed a basket, pretending to look for something on the shelves. I noticed he was avoiding eye contact. "How's married life?" I asked gently. His shoulders stiffened. "Good. Busy. Lena's planning something big for her business, so I'm helping." I didn't press. I just nodded. But something about the way he said it, flat, rehearsed, made my heart sink. When I got home, I couldn't stop thinking about him. That same night, I called Aunt Carla. "He looked so small," I told her, "like someone drained the color out of him." Carla sighed. "Maybe you should let him figure it out himself, Liz. You know how sons are. They don't listen until it's too late." Her words stayed with me. I didn't want to admit it, but I knew she was right. If I pushed too hard, Lena would twist it again and make me look controlling. A week after that, a delivery driver knocked on my door with a package addressed to Ethan. "He said you'd sign for it," the man explained. I frowned. Ethan hadn't been to my house in months. Still, I accepted it and placed the box on the table. It was heavy, sealed with fancy wrapping paper and a designer store's logo. Curiosity got the best of me, so I called him right away. "Ethan, a package came here for you. Should I bring it? Over?" He sounded distracted. "Oh, yeah, I forgot to update my address. Just leave it, Mom. Lena will pick it up." But she never did. 2 weeks later, the box was still there. Finally, I opened it. Inside were luxury cosmetics, jewelry receipts, and a note that said, "Balance due, 2,370. Final payment pending." My heart thudded. The receipt had Ethan's name on it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the couch staring at the receipt and remembered something from before their wedding. Lena had once come over to help me plan a small family dinner. While I was making coffee, she looked around the living room and said with a smile, "You live comfortably, Mrs. Collins. I guess Ethan's inheritance will keep us both secure." I had laughed it off then, but now those words felt colder. I started piecing it together. The money, the control, the distance she created between Ethan and everyone else. The next morning, I went to the bank. My friend at the counter looked around before whispering, "Off the record, Liz, your daughter-in-law's been moving money fast. She uses Ethan's card for almost everything." My hands trembled as I thanked her. I walked out into the parking lot feeling sick. I wanted to warn my son, but he'd already chosen who to believe. So instead, I went home, pulled out a folder, and began keeping records. Every message, every receipt, every strange detail I found. I didn't know when he'd need it, but I had a feeling that one day he would. 2 months passed, and the silence between us turned into a wall. Ethan didn't visit, didn't call, not even on my birthday. The only updates I got about his life came through other people. Neighbors who'd seen them arguing outside their apartment. A friend of his who mentioned he'd borrowed money just until payday. Every night I sat by the window wondering if I should go to him or keep my distance. I had already been painted as the jealous mother. One more step and Lena would turn that into a weapon. One evening, Aunt Carla stopped by with a worried look. "Liz, I don't want to scare you," she said, sitting down and lowering her voice. "But my friend works at a travel agency. She said Lena came in last week asking about flight prices to Spain, one-way tickets." My heart skipped a beat. "Did she say anything about Ethan?" Carla shook her head. "No, she just said she needed a fresh start." I wanted to believe it was just a misunderstanding, but my stomach tightened. That same night, I scrolled through Ethan's social media again. His posts had stopped completely. The last one was from a month ago. A photo of Lena smiling in a fancy restaurant with the caption, "She deserves the world." The comments were full of hearts, but I noticed something odd. One user had written, "She's back?" and then deleted it minutes later. It was small, but it stood out. I clicked on the profile. It was private. I took a screenshot anyway. I didn't know what "back" meant, but something told me this wasn't her first time leaving a trail behind. The next morning, I called Ethan. To my surprise, he answered. His voice was quiet, tired. "Mom, please stop asking around about Lena. She's been stressed. You're only making it worse." I bit my tongue. "Ethan," I said softly, "I'm not against her. I'm just worried about you." He sighed. "She says you keep trying to find problems between us." I wanted to tell him about the package, the receipts, the talk about Spain, but I knew it wouldn't matter. He was already deep inside her world, defending her every move. So instead, I said, "Just remember, love isn't supposed to feel like walking on eggshells." He hung up after a quiet pause. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about how fast things had changed, from a mother helping her son pick a wedding suit to being treated like an intruder. I opened my folder again and added the screenshot of that deleted comment. The file was growing thicker. Something was coming. I could feel it. Every instinct in me whispered the same thing. A storm doesn't vanish when you ignore it. It waits until you're most unprepared to strike. 3 more months slipped by before everything started to crack. It began quietly, with a phone call from an unknown number one Saturday morning. I hesitated before answering, expecting another telemarketer, but the voice that came through was shaky and low. "Mrs. Collins, you don't know me, but I used to work with Lena." My pulse quickened. "Who is this?" I asked. The woman didn't say her name. "Just someone who doesn't want to see another person get hurt. Check your son's joint account. She's been moving money to another name for weeks, someone named Victor Hayes." Then the line went dead. For a few seconds, I just stood there, holding the phone to my ear even though the call had ended. My heart pounded so loud I could barely hear my thoughts. I opened my laptop and logged into my banking app, where Ethan's account was still listed as a joint link from before his marriage. Most of it was grayed out since it wasn't mine, but the balance figures showed a sharp drop. Thousands gone in less than a month. I wanted to call Ethan right away, but something inside told me to wait. If I confronted him without proof, he'd run straight to Lena, and she'd twist it again. So instead, I called my friend at the bank, the same one who'd warned me before. She looked up the name quietly. "Victor Hayes," she murmured, clicking her keyboard. "There's a transfer history. Same address as one of Lena's old accounts, just under a different name." My stomach turned. "So she's been funneling money out," I said. My friend nodded, whispering, "Looks that way. You didn't hear it from me." That night, I printed every statement I could access and slipped them into my folder. The stack was thick now. Messages, receipts, photos, warnings. Each page felt heavier than the last. I sat at the kitchen table staring at the cream dress hanging in my closet. I still hadn't worn it since the wedding, but now it seemed like proof of something deeper, the start of a pattern, a warning I hadn't seen soon enough. Just before midnight, my phone buzzed again. It was Ethan. My heart jumped, but when I answered, all I heard was noise in the background. Music, laughter, then Lena's voice saying something sharp I couldn't make out. "Mom?" Ethan said finally, his voice slurred. "You shouldn't worry about us. Lena loves me. She said you'd never understand." I bit my lip, holding back tears. "Ethan, love doesn't drain your soul or your bank account," I whispered. But he'd already hung up. As I set the phone down, I knew the fall was coming. I didn't know when, but it would come. And when it did, I needed to be ready. 2 weeks later, I got a call from Aunt Carla early in the morning. "Liz, turn on the news," she said, her voice shaking. My hands trembled as I grabbed the remote. There on the local business channel was a small headline scrolling at the bottom. "Boutique owner under investigation for fraud." The photo beside it made my heart stop. It was Lena, smiling like she was posing for a magazine cover. The reporter said she had taken large advance payments from clients for an online fashion line that never launched, then disappeared with the money. I sat frozen on the couch, my tea turning cold beside me. Within hours, the story spread. Neighbors started messaging me privately, asking if it was the same Lena who married my son. I didn't reply to anyone. I just stared at my phone, waiting for Ethan to call. But he didn't. Not that day, not the next. On the third day, I finally called him. The line rang and rang until he answered, his voice hoarse and tired. "Mom, please don't say anything. It's not what it looks like." I kept my tone calm. "Then tell me what it is." There was a pause, then a broken whisper. "She said people are jealous, that they want to ruin her because she's successful." My chest tightened. "Ethan, the police are involved. This isn't gossip anymore." He didn't respond for a few seconds, then said quietly, "I need to go. She's upset." The call ended. I sat there staring at the wall, realizing he was still defending her even as the world saw the truth. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked around the house, each step echoing in the silence. The cream dress caught my eye again, hanging neatly in the closet. I ran my fingers over the fabric. It reminded me of that moment at the wedding, the humiliation, the pain, the way Lena's eyes had glinted like she was proud of what she'd done. Back then, I thought it was personal. Now I saw the pattern clearly. She destroyed people by turning them against those who loved them most. By the end of the week, Lena's boutique website vanished, her social media accounts deleted, Ethan's too. When I drove past their apartment, the blinds were closed and their car was gone. I felt a wave of dread wash over me. This wasn't just another fight or misunderstanding. They had vanished. Together or not, I didn't know. 3 nights later, my phone rang again. It was late, past midnight. I hesitated before answering, my heart thudding in my chest. On the other end, Ethan's voice was barely a whisper. "Mom, she's gone." I sat upright. "Gone? What do you mean?" His breath shook. "She cleaned out everything. The accounts. The house. There's nothing left." I stayed quiet for a moment, the silence between us heavy. Then I said softly, "I warned you, Ethan. She tried the same thing on me." Ethan didn't say anything for a while. All I could hear was his shaky breathing through the line. Then came a sound I hadn't heard in years. He was crying. Really crying, the way he did when he was little and scraped his knee. "Mom, I don't know what to do," he finally said, his voice breaking. "She took everything. My savings, my paycheck, even the money from the house deposit. I checked the bank today. 0 balance. She left a note that said, 'Don't look for me.'" I gripped the phone tighter. "Where are you now?" I asked. "In the apartment," he whispered. "It's empty. She took her clothes, the TV, even the dishes." My eyes filled with tears, but I kept my voice steady. "Listen to me, Ethan. You need to call the bank right now, freeze your accounts, report the theft before she moves the money again." He sniffled. "I don't even know where to start." I said, "I'll help you. Just come home." He arrived 2 hours later, just as the sun was coming up. His eyes were swollen, his hair messy, his shirt crumpled like he hadn't slept in days. When he walked through the door, he didn't speak. He just hugged me tightly. It felt like all those months of silence, anger, and hurt melted away in that moment. I held him and whispered, "It's going to be okay. We'll fix this." After he sat down, I brought out the thick folder I had been keeping, the one filled with every proof, every receipt, every small clue I had collected. Ethan's eyes widened when he saw it. "You kept all this?" I nodded, because I knew this day would come. I didn't want to be right, but I had to be ready. He flipped through the papers, his hands trembling. There were screenshots of messages, transaction logs, and that old receipt from the boutique where Lena had used his card. He stopped when he reached the first page, the text where he'd told me to wear the cream dress. His voice cracked as he said, "You saved this?" I looked at him quietly. "Yes. That day wasn't just about a dress, Ethan. It was the start of how she turned you against me. She wanted control, and she knew she could only get it by breaking what we had." He covered his face with his hands. "Mom, I was so cruel to you," he murmured. "I let her poison everything." I put my hand on his shoulder. "She fooled you. That's what people like her do. But you're here now. That's what matters." For the first time in months, I saw a hint of the boy I raised, the kindness in his eyes returning slowly through the pain. I knew it wouldn't be easy to rebuild his life, but he wasn't alone anymore. What he didn't know yet was that Lena's story wasn't finished. She had left more than just debts and lies behind. She had left a trail, and that trail was about to lead us somewhere darker than either of us expected. The next morning, Ethan and I went straight to the bank. He looked pale but determined, clutching the folder like it was a lifeline. The bank manager recognized him immediately and guided us into a small office. "We've already been trying to contact you, Mr. Collins," the manager said. "There have been multiple large transfers in the past 10 days, mostly international. The last one was to an offshore account in Spain." My heart dropped. Spain. The same country Aunt Carla mentioned months ago. Ethan's voice trembled. "Can you stop it? Can we get the money back?" The manager sighed. "We've frozen the remaining balance, but most of it is already gone. We'll file a fraud report, but these cases can take time." Ethan buried his face in his hands. I reached over and said firmly, "We'll handle it step by step. She's not as clever as she thinks." After the meeting, we went to the police station to file a formal report. The officer on duty listened carefully as Ethan explained everything, showing the receipts and the note Lena had left. When he finished, the officer flipped through the folder and looked up at me. "Ma'am, you've got more evidence here than most people bring in for full investigations," he said. "Did you really keep all this?" I nodded. "A mother knows when something's wrong." The officer gave a small nod of respect. You did the right thing. Later that evening, we sat in my living room, exhausted. The silence between us was heavy but no longer cold. Ethan broke it first. I feel so stupid, Mom. She told me you hated her, that you wanted me to stay single forever. I shook my head slowly. No, son. I wanted you to be happy. I just wanted you to see the kind of woman you were marrying. He looked at me, guilt written all over his face. She said you wore white to humiliate her, that you tried to upstage her. I let out a tired breath. And you believed her? His eyes filled with tears. Yes, because she made me feel like if I didn't, I'd lose her. We sat quietly for a long time. Outside, the wind howled against the windows. She'll face the consequences, I said finally. Maybe not today, but soon. People like her always do. Ethan looked up. You really think so? I gave a small, knowing smile. I know so. And if the world doesn't catch her, the truth will. That night, while Ethan finally slept on the couch, I sat by the window scrolling through news reports. One headline caught my attention. Fraud suspect believed to have left the country under false name. The article mentioned a new alias, Elena Hayes. My stomach turned. I whispered to myself, Victor Hayes. Elena Hayes. She hadn't disappeared alone. She had help, and I knew then that this wasn't over. Not yet. The following week was a blur of paperwork, phone calls, and long, sleepless nights. Ethan stayed with me while he tried to sort his life out. Every morning, he'd sit at the kitchen table, staring at the laptop, refreshing his email, waiting for updates from the police. Every evening, he'd apologize again for how he had treated me, and every time I'd tell him the same thing. It's in the past, son. Let's focus on what's ahead. But the truth was, I still carried that sting from the wedding. His words, the humiliation, the judgment in everyone's eyes. Some wounds heal, but they don't forget. One night, just as I was locking up, I noticed headlights flashing outside. A car had parked across the street, engine still running. It stayed there for a few minutes before slowly driving away. I didn't think much of it at first, but the same thing happened the next night, and the one after that. The same black sedan, tinted windows, parking across the road at odd hours. I told Ethan about it, but he thought I was being paranoid. Maybe it's just someone from the neighborhood, he said. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching. 2 days later, the phone rang again. It was the same officer who had taken our report. Mrs. Collins, there's something you should know, he said. We traced one of the accounts connected to the transfers. The name used was Victor Hayes, but the ID photo matched someone else, a man currently under investigation for helping several suspects escape the country. My chest tightened. So Lena didn't work alone. He sighed. No, ma'am. And we believe she might have done this before, possibly in another city under a different name. We'll need your son to come in again for a follow-up statement. After the call, I found Ethan in the living room scrolling through old photos of him and Lena. She never even looked real in these, he said quietly. It's like she was playing a part. I sat beside him and said, because she was. That's what she does. She studies people, finds their weakness, and uses it until they break. He didn't reply, just stared at one photo of their wedding day. She made me hate you for no reason, he whispered, and I let her. That night, the car came back again. This time, I didn't ignore it. I stepped outside with my phone in my hand and walked halfway down the driveway. The car's headlights turned off and the engine went silent. For a moment, the street was completely still. Then the vehicle slowly reversed and drove away into the darkness. I took a photo of the license plate before it disappeared around the corner. When I came back inside, Ethan was standing at the door, pale and wide-eyed. Mom, he said quietly, that's Lena's car. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The air around me felt heavy, like the walls were closing in. Are you sure? I asked. Ethan nodded slowly, his face pale. Yes. She bought that car right before the wedding. I thought she sold it. He looked toward the window again, his hands trembling. Why would she come back? I didn't answer. My mind was already racing. The police had said she was gone, but if she was here, it meant she was either desperate or confident that no one would touch her. Neither option felt safe. We double-checked the photo I'd taken of the license plate. The numbers matched the registration I had written down months ago from one of Lena's old receipts. My heart thudded as I said, "We're calling the police. Now." Ethan nodded, but before I could dial, a message appeared on my phone. It was from a new number. "Tell Ethan to stop talking to the police. You don't want this to get worse." No name, no emoji, just those words. Ethan read it over my shoulder. "She's threatening you," he whispered. I deleted the message immediately, but it didn't calm me. I called the officer anyway and explained everything: the car, the message, the pattern. He told us to stay inside, lock the doors, and not confront anyone. "We'll send someone to patrol the area tonight," he said. His voice was calm, but I could hear a hint of concern underneath. That night, neither of us slept. Every sound made Ethan flinch: a dog barking, the creak of the floorboards, the hum of a passing car. Around 2 a.m., he came to the living room where I was sitting with a cup of coffee gone cold. "I think she's watching us," he said quietly. "Why would she come back, Mom? She already took everything." I looked at him and said softly, "Because she's not done. People like her feed on control. Maybe she lost the money, or maybe she just wants to see you crumble." The next morning, the police found tire tracks near our driveway that matched her car model, but nothing else. No fingerprints, no witnesses. It was as if she had vanished again, just out of reach. Ethan tried to act calm, but his nerves were fraying. He barely ate, barely spoke, spending most of the day pacing the house. When the phone rang again that evening, he jumped. It was the officer. "We have a lead," he said. "A woman matching Lena's description was seen at a hotel near the Old River Bridge. She used another name, Elena Hayes. We're checking the security footage now." Ethan's eyes met. Mine. "That's her," he said firmly. "She's back for a reason." I nodded slowly. "Then we'll find out what it is." But deep inside, I already feared the answer. She wasn't just back to haunt us. She was back because she still had something to lose, something she thought we could take from her. That evening felt endless. Every hour crawled by as if time itself was testing us. Ethan sat by the window, staring out at the street where the car had been. I could see the guilt in his posture. Shoulders hunched, hands clenched, eyes fixed on nothing. "Mom," he said suddenly, "what if she's dangerous? What if she comes here?" His voice trembled. I walked over and placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then we'll do what we've always done," I said quietly. "We'll stay calm, and we'll be ready." After dinner, neither of us could eat much. The house felt heavy, every creak of the wooden floorboards making us look up. I decided to check the front door again, even though I had already locked it twice. The street was empty, silent, just the faint glow of the streetlights on the pavement. But there was something different this time. An envelope stuck under the windshield wiper of my car. My stomach twisted. I opened the door slowly, glanced around, and hurried outside to grab it. Inside was a single photograph. It was from Ethan's wedding. The picture showed me standing near the reception table, my cream dress glowing almost white under the camera flash. Behind me, blurred but unmistakable, was Lena, looking straight into the camera, her eyes cold. Scrawled in red ink across the photo were 3 words: "You should have stayed quiet." My hand shook as I brought the picture inside. Ethan's face went pale when he saw it. "Mom, she's playing games," he said. "She wants to scare us." I nodded slowly, though my voice came out thin. "She's already scared enough people in her life. We're not going to be next." I called the police again, this time insisting they check the security footage from nearby houses. They promised to send an officer to collect the photo. While waiting, Ethan and I went through the folder again. Every page, every document now felt like a weapon, one she didn't want us to use. "Mom?" Ethan said after a while. What if she came back because she knows the police are close to catching her? Maybe she's trying to destroy the evidence. His words made sense, but there was something else bothering me. If she wanted to hide, she would have stayed gone. Coming back here meant she needed something. The officer arrived just before midnight. He looked at the photo carefully, then at me. "Ma'am, this looks like intimidation. We'll open a harassment file as well," he said. "But this woman is careful. She's covered her tracks before. If she's nearby, she's not alone." His tone was calm, but heavy. I could tell he believed we were in danger. After he left, Ethan locked all the doors again, checking the windows twice. When I finally went to bed, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint hum of the refrigerator and the ticking clock on the wall. Every few minutes, my mind replayed the image on that photo, her eyes staring straight at me. Not from a memory, but like she was still watching. Around 3 a.m., I heard footsteps in the hallway. My heart raced until I realized it was Ethan. He stood in the doorway holding his phone. "Mom," he whispered, "look at this." He showed me an email that had just come in from an unknown sender. The subject line read, "You can't undo what's already done." Attached was a video clip. We opened it, and what we saw made my blood run cold. It was footage from a small security camera, our house, earlier that night. The image showed me walking outside to get the envelope, then turning around and going back in. The camera panned slightly, just enough to catch a figure standing behind a tree across the street. Even though it was blurry, I knew that posture, that silhouette. It was her. Lena. She'd been there, watching. Ethan's hand gripped mine tightly. "She's playing with us, Mom. She wants to break us before the police get to her." I swallowed hard, forcing my voice to stay steady. "Then we won't break," I said. "We'll finish what she started." I could feel anger replacing fear now. Slow, deliberate anger. She had taken his money, his peace, his trust. But this time she wasn't getting away quietly. By morning, I had a plan forming in my head. I didn't share it with Ethan yet, not until I was sure. But one thing was clear. Lena had come back to our town for a reason. Whether it was to threaten, to steal, or to cover her tracks, she'd made a mistake. She had shown herself. And once someone like her leaves a shadow, you can follow it right to the truth. The next morning, sunlight crept through the curtains, but the house still felt dark. Neither of us had slept after watching that video. Ethan sat on the couch, his face buried in his hands, and I stood by the window, coffee untouched in my mug. Every car that passed made my heart jump. I knew she was out there somewhere, waiting, watching, enjoying the panic she caused. That was Lena's way. She never hit once. She hit in waves. She'd break you slowly until you doubted your own senses. I decided it was time to stop reacting and start acting. "Ethan," I said quietly, "we're not going to let her control this anymore. She's not a ghost. She's human, and humans make mistakes." He looked up at me, exhausted. "What can we do? The police are trying. But she's always a step ahead." I walked over to the table and opened the folder again, spreading the papers across the surface. "We'll make her slip. She thinks she's untouchable because she hides behind fake names and fear, so we'll use that against her." We started by listing everything we knew. Her aliases, her known contacts, her business names, her travel routes, even the timing of her last withdrawals. I remembered that she had once mentioned an old friend who helped her with paperwork, someone named Rita. It had seemed harmless at the time, but now it felt important. Ethan searched the name online, and after a few minutes he found a local advertisement for Rita's design agency, registered only a week before Lena disappeared. "Mom, look at this," he said, pointing at the screen. "The business address is near the bridge, the same area the police said she was last seen." My pulse quickened. "We're going there," I said firmly. Ethan hesitated. "The police said to stay inside." I met his eyes. "They can't protect us every second, and she already knows where we live." I'd rather face her than wait for her to show up again. By afternoon, we drove to the address listed online. It was a small rented office above an old cafe, the kind of place that didn't attract attention. The sign on the door said Rita & Co.'s Designs, but the space looked barely used. A desk, a few files, a broken printer, no computers, no sign of real work. Ethan opened a drawer, and inside were several envelopes with bank logos, all addressed to different names. Elena Hayes, Marissa Cole, and Lena Gray. My chest tightened. "She's still using these," I whispered. Suddenly, footsteps echoed in the hallway outside. Ethan froze, and I pressed a finger to my lips. A woman's voice floated from the stairwell, calm, familiar, pretending to be casual. "Forgot my keys again. I swear my head's always in the clouds." The door handle turned. Without thinking, I grabbed Ethan's arm and pulled him behind the desk. The door creaked open, and the scent of Lena's perfume filled the room. That same sweet, heavy scent I'd smelled at the wedding. Through the narrow gap, I saw her walk in. Her hair was darker now, her clothes simpler, but I would have known her anywhere. She walked straight to the desk and opened the same drawer Ethan had checked. Her movements were sharp, practiced. She pulled out a USB drive, glanced at it, and muttered, "Not yet. Too risky." Then she paused, looking toward the window, and for a terrifying second, I thought she'd sensed us. Ethan's breathing hitched, so I squeezed his arm lightly to keep him still. After a few moments, Lena sighed, dropped the drive into her bag, and walked out, her heels clicking down the hall. We waited until her footsteps faded before standing up. My legs felt like jelly, but my mind was racing. "Did you see what that was?" Ethan whispered. "A USB, probably the same one she used to move the money." I nodded. "And now we know where she keeps it." We hurried back to the car, locking the doors even before starting the engine. My hands were still trembling as I said, "She's not gone yet. She's tying loose ends, maybe deleting proof, maybe preparing to run again. That USB could be everything the police need." Ethan leaned back, running a hand through his hair. "Then we have to tell them now." When we got home, I called the officer immediately and told him what we saw. He listened carefully, then said, "You did the right thing, but don't go back there. We'll get a warrant and check the office." His tone was serious, heavier than before. "If she knows you've seen her, she might get desperate. Be careful." That night, I barely blinked. I kept replaying the scene in that office. Her calm face, her steady hands, her complete lack of fear. People like her didn't panic. They plotted. And I knew one thing for certain. If she realized Ethan had turned against her, she wouldn't just run. She'd try to finish what she started. The next morning, I found a single daisy on my doorstep. No note, no footprints, just the flower lying there, fresh and deliberate. Ethan saw it too, and his voice cracked when he said, "She knows we followed her, Mom." I picked up the daisy, my hand steady now. "Then she just made her biggest mistake," I said, "because this time she came too close." The daisy lay in the center of my kitchen table like a quiet warning. It wasn't the kind of gesture that screamed danger. It whispered it, subtle, personal, mocking. That was how Lena worked. She didn't break windows or leave threats scrawled in blood. She sent flowers, she smiled while she lied, and she made her victims doubt their own fear. I looked at that little white flower and felt an old ache stirring inside. The same one I'd felt the night Ethan yelled at me at his wedding. Back then, I thought she had simply humiliated me in front of everyone. Now, I realized she'd started something much larger. She'd planted a seed of control in both our lives, and it had grown into this. Ethan sat across from me, staring at the daisy as if it could speak. "It's her way of saying she's one step ahead," he muttered. His voice was low, angry, but underneath it was a tremble. Fear, exhaustion, guilt. She knows exactly how to get in my head. He rubbed his hands over his face. "Every time I think she's done, she's already planning the next move." I reached across the table and took his hand. "She wants you to react, Ethan. That's what she feeds on. Your fear, your confusion, your guilt. The moment you lose control, she wins again. He nodded, but I could tell he wasn't convinced. The betrayal had cut too deep. "Mom," he whispered, "how can someone love you one day and destroy you the next?" I sighed. Because she never loved you. She loved what you could give her. Your trust, your money, your loyalty. When those ran out, she moved on. But you know what she doesn't have anymore? He looked up. I squeezed his hand. Control. You're not her puppet now. We spent the rest of the morning going over every detail again. The office, the USB, the email, the car. The police were supposed to follow up that day, but waiting for a call felt unbearable. Around noon, Ethan went out to clear his head. I watched him walk down the street, hands in his pockets, shoulders slumped, looking like a man carrying years of regret. I stayed behind, sorting through the folder again, adding the photo of the daisy on top. A few hours later, I heard his footsteps rush up the porch stairs. The door swung open and he stood there, out of breath, his face pale. "Mom," he said, "you need to see this." He handed me a folded flyer he'd picked up from a cafe down the road. It was advertising an art auction for local artists. And there, at the bottom, in small print, was the name "Curated by Elena Hayes." I felt my stomach tighten. "She's not hiding anymore," I said quietly. "She's flaunting it." Ethan ran a hand through his hair. "She must be using it as a cover, probably a way to launder whatever money she hasn't moved yet." His jaw tightened. "Mom, what if she's planning to leave again after this event? What if this is her last stop before disappearing for good?" I looked at the flyer again. The event was in 2 days, held at a rented hall on the edge of town. "Then 2 days is all we have," I said firmly. "We'll go, but not to confront her, to finish this." That night, I called Officer Doran, the one handling our case. He sounded tired but alert. When I told him about the event, he paused for a long moment. "That matches some of the information we've been getting," he said. "We found transactions linked to that event's organizer under the same alias. If she shows up, we'll have enough to bring her in." I could hear him flipping papers on his desk. "Don't approach her. Just let us know when she arrives." I agreed, but part of me knew I wouldn't be able to sit quietly if I saw her again. There was too much left unsaid, too much that she had taken. The next day passed in a haze of nerves. Ethan barely spoke. He spent most of the time pacing by the window, glancing outside every few minutes. Once, he said quietly, "You think she'll actually show up? Maybe she's too smart for that." I shook my head. "No, Ethan. People like her think they're untouchable. They can't resist watching the damage they've caused." By the evening of the event, the air was thick with tension. We dressed simply, trying to blend in. I wore a plain gray coat, Ethan a dark sweater. As we parked near the hall, my heart pounded so hard it hurt. The place was modest but decorated elegantly. White curtains, golden lights, soft music playing from speakers. Ironically, it reminded me of his wedding, down to the scent of flowers in the air. We walked in quietly. The crowd was small, mostly couples and collectors chatting over glasses of wine. Ethan scanned the room, his eyes sharp. I stood beside him, pretending to admire a painting, though my focus was elsewhere. The exits, the shadows, the corners where someone could hide. Then I saw her. She stood near the back of the hall, her hair tied up, a black dress that made her blend in but not disappear. She was speaking to a man, tall, well-dressed, and laughing softly. That same fake, sweet laugh that used to fill my kitchen when she visited before the wedding. I felt Ethan tense beside me. "That's her," he whispered, his voice tight with anger. I placed a hand on his arm. "Wait," I said. "Let the officers handle it." But he shook his head, his jaw set. "No, Mom, I need to do this." Before I could stop him, he started walking toward her. My heart dropped. I followed quickly, staying a few steps behind. As he reached her, she turned, and for a second her face froze. Then she smiled, calm as ever. "Ethan," she said smoothly, "I was hoping you'd come." Ethan's voice trembled. "You stole from me, from us, and now you're standing here like nothing happened?" Her smile didn't fade. "You make it sound so harsh. I borrowed what was mine. You wouldn't understand. You never did." She turned her eyes to me. "And you, Mrs. Collins, you really should have stopped playing detective. It's a dangerous hobby." I could feel the anger building in my chest, but I kept my tone cold. "Dangerous for who, Lena? Because last I checked, the law's catching up to you." She laughed softly, tilting her head. "The law," she said. "They can't touch me. Everything I did under names that don't exist." That's when a voice came from behind her. Maybe not anymore. Officer Doran stepped forward, flanked by 2 other officers. Lena's smile faltered for the first time. She turned sharply, but Doran continued. "Elena Hayes, also known as Lena Gray, you're under arrest for fraud, identity theft, and financial misconduct." The crowd gasped. A glass shattered somewhere behind us. She tried to step back, but Ethan blocked her path. For a brief moment, her calm cracked. Her eyes flashed with something dark, almost hateful. "You think this is over?" she hissed. "You have no idea what's coming." As the officers handcuffed her and led her away, I finally let out the breath I'd been holding for months. The music had stopped, the crowd whispering. Ethan stood motionless, watching her being escorted out. Then, slowly, his shoulders dropped, and he turned to me. "It's done," he said softly, as if he didn't quite believe it. I nodded, feeling tears blur my vision. "Yes," I whispered, "it's done." But as we left the hall, something still nagged at me. That look she gave us, it wasn't panic. It was a promise, a warning. And when we got home later that night, I found one last message waiting in my inbox. No sender, name, no subject line, just one sentence. "You can lock a door, Liz, but you can't lock a mind." I stared at the screen for a long time before shutting the laptop. The world outside was quiet again, but I knew peace would take longer to return. Some ghosts don't vanish. They wait, watching from the edges of memory. Yet for the first time in a long while, I wasn't afraid, because this time she wasn't in control. The days after Lena's arrest were strangely quiet, the kind of quiet that didn't bring peace, just uncertainty. The headlines faded after a few days. Local woman arrested in financial scheme, suspect linked to multiple identities. But even as her name vanished from the news cycle, her shadow still lingered in our lives. Every time the phone rang or a car slowed near the house, Ethan tensed. I tried to reassure him, telling him it was over, that she was behind bars, but deep down, I knew what he was feeling. When someone has controlled you, haunted you, twisted your world, their absence doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like waiting for them to come back. Ethan started attending counseling sessions arranged through a victim support program. The first few times, I had to drive him there myself. He would just sit quietly on the passenger seat, staring out of the window, lost somewhere between guilt and disbelief. "She was so good at pretending," he said one morning, almost to himself. "Every lie sounded like the truth. I used to think I was lucky she chose me." I didn't interrupt. Sometimes the silence helped him more than words ever could. Meanwhile, I spent most of my days trying to put the house back in order, not just physically, but emotionally. I threw away old decorations from the wedding, packed up photos, and finally took that cream dress off its hanger. It had been sitting there for months like a ghost of the past, untouched, accusing. I folded it neatly and placed it in a box. But as I did, I realized something strange. The dress wasn't the symbol of shame I once thought it was. It was proof of how far we'd come, of how lies can twist the truth, and how sometimes, even when the world points at you, time reveals what really happened. A week later, Officer Doran called. His tone was serious but measured. "Mrs. Collins, I wanted to inform you personally. Lena, well, Elena Hayes, was transferred to a federal facility while her case is being processed. There's more than one charge now. It turns out she's connected to similar cases in 2 other states. I felt a cold weight settle in my chest. So she's done this before? He sighed. Yes, same pattern. Charming the victim, taking control of finances, isolating them, then vanishing. But this time, we caught her mid-cycle. Thanks to your records and your quick report, we were able to connect the dots. I thanked him quietly, though part of me wasn't sure how to feel. Relief, pride, anger, they all mixed together until none of them made sense. After the call, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea, watching the evening light fade. The world outside looked calm again, but peace felt like something fragile, something that could shatter with a single wrong sound. That night, Ethan came home from his session looking tired but lighter. The counselor said guilt is normal, he said, sitting down beside me. But it's hard not to think about how much damage I caused when I believed her. I treated you like you were the enemy. I reached for his hand. You were under her spell, Ethan. You weren't the first and you won't be the last. What matters is that you saw the truth before it was too late. He nodded slowly. Then, after a pause, he said, Mom, you know what's strange? I keep dreaming about her. Not the real her, but the version I thought I knew. The one who laughed at my stupid jokes, who said she loved my cooking, who held my hand and promised forever. It's like my mind can't let go of the illusion. I looked at him carefully. That's not strange, son. It's grief. You're mourning the person you believed she was, the version she created for you. But she was never real. She was a mask. His eyes filled with tears. I just wish I could forget her face. I gave a small, sad smile. You won't. But one day, you'll remember it without pain. Over the next few weeks, things slowly began to shift. Ethan found a new job. Not a big one, just a small accounting role in a local firm. But it was a start. He said he wanted to earn back what he'd lost, not in money, but in trust. I could see his confidence returning little by little, like sunlight creeping back after a long storm. One afternoon, as I was watering the plants outside, a letter arrived in the mail. The envelope had no return address, no markings, just my name typed neatly across the front. For a moment, I thought it was another court notice or a bank statement. But when I opened it, I froze. Inside was a small, handwritten note in familiar, looping handwriting. Freedom is only borrowed, Liz. Some debts never stay paid. There was no signature, but I didn't need one. I knew that handwriting, elegant, precise, with that small upward curl at the end of every L. It was Lena's. My pulse quickened. I looked around instinctively, scanning the quiet street. Everything looked normal. A delivery truck passing by, a neighbor's dog barking in the distance. But I could feel my heart pounding in my ears. I brought the note inside and showed it to Ethan when he got home. His face went pale. Mom, she's in custody, he said quickly, almost pleading with himself. She can't reach us. I nodded slowly. Unless someone's helping her. Remember that man she was with at the art show? Ethan's eyes narrowed. The one in the gray suit. I didn't see his face properly, but he didn't look surprised. When she got arrested. The next day, we went straight to Officer Doran again. He studied the note carefully and said, This could have been mailed before her transfer, but we'll check the handwriting and postmark to be sure. Don't panic yet. But his eyes betrayed a flicker of worry. He knew as well as we did that Lena always planned ahead. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He kept pacing around the living room, glancing at the locked windows, checking the curtains. What if she's not really behind bars, Mom? He whispered. What if she made some kind of deal? I shook my head, though I didn't feel as confident as I sounded. Even if she's out there, she can't hurt us anymore. We're not the same people we were before. But I couldn't ignore the unease gnawing at me. The next morning, I went out to check the mailbox again. There was nothing, just bills and flyers. Still, I noticed something odd. The daisy she had left before, the one I'd thrown in the trash, was back. Not the same flower, but another one. Fresh. Perfectly white. Lying gently on top of the mailbox, as if placed there with care. My throat tightened. I looked up and down the street. No cars parked nearby, no footsteps, no movement. Just quiet. Too quiet. When I brought it inside, Ethan froze. "It's her," he said. "It's the same flower." I placed it on the table beside the note, the two of them sitting there like symbols of unfinished business. "She's not gone," I said softly. "Not yet." That evening, I sat by the window long after Ethan had gone to bed, watching the shadows outside. My mind kept replaying her last words before the officers took her away. "You think this is over? You have no idea what's coming." Maybe it was another mind game. Maybe she still had people on the outside doing her bidding. Or maybe, even behind bars, Lena had found a way to remind us that control wasn't always about presence. Sometimes it was about fear that stayed alive in your head long after the person was gone. As I finally got up to close the blinds, something on the front lawn caught my eye. There, glinting under the porch light, was a small flash drive. I opened the door slowly, my pulse racing. It had been placed carefully on the top step. I picked it up, my fingers trembling, and turned it over. A single word was written on the side in black marker. Truth. I stood there in the cool night air, staring at it. My first instinct was to call the police, but another part of me, the part that had fought, endured, and survived Lena's lies, told me to wait. Whatever was on that drive, it wasn't random. It was intentional. Maybe it was her final game, or maybe, just maybe, it held something that could end this once and for all. As I locked the door and set the flash drive on the table beside the daisy and the note, I realized something I hadn't before. Lena wasn't just a person anymore. She had become a presence, a shadow in our story that refused to fade. And somewhere deep inside, I knew this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of another truth she had left behind, one we were about to uncover, whether we wanted to or not. Morning light seeped through the curtains, thin and uncertain. The flash drive sat on the table where I had left it the night before, next to the daisy and Lena's note. Ethan hadn't woken up yet, and for a while I just stared at that small piece of plastic. It was strange how something so tiny could hold so much power. Truth, lies, pain, or all of them at once. My hands trembled slightly as I plugged it into the old laptop. The screen flickered, and a single folder appeared. Watch Me. Inside was a video file. No title, no date. Just a timestamp from a week ago. I hesitated, then pressed play. The image was shaky, like it had been recorded from a phone. Lena's face appeared. Calm. Composed. That same unnerving confidence she always carried. She was sitting somewhere dim, maybe a hotel room. "If you're watching this," she began, "then they've already caught me. Or maybe they think they have." She leaned closer to the camera, her smile faint. But truth isn't about what people believe. It's about what they can't prove. My heart pounded. She continued, her voice low but sharp. "You think you've won, Liz. You think you've saved him. But you should know something. I never stole anything that wasn't offered. Every password, every signature, every secret. He gave them to me. Willingly. And you? You watched it happen. You saw the signs and stayed quiet because you wanted to be the good mother. Don't you see? You and I, we're not that different. We both wanted control. I just never pretended it was love." The video ended with a soft laugh and the sound of a door closing. The screen went black. For a long time, I didn't move. My mind raced through every word, every pause, every calculated expression. It was exactly what she wanted, to make me question everything again. She was still playing her game, even from behind bars or wherever she truly was. I ejected the drive and sat there quietly until I heard Ethan's footsteps. He looked at the laptop and then at me. You watched it, didn't you? I nodded. She's trying to twist it again, he said, his jaw tightening. Don't let her. I smiled faintly. I won't. But she's right about one thing. Truth isn't about belief. It's about what you choose to stand by. We decided to hand the flash drive over to Officer Doran later that day. When he saw it, he frowned. She's taunting you, but this might still help us. If this video was recorded recently, it could reveal where she's hiding or who's helping her. He promised to send it for forensic analysis. That night, as I watched Ethan sitting on the couch, his posture no longer weighed down by shame, I realized something important. Lena's greatest weapon wasn't her lies. It was her ability to make people doubt their own hearts. But doubt only lives where truth is weak. And ours, though battered, had survived. Days turned into weeks, and the police confirmed that the video had been filmed before her arrest. It was old, just another pre-recorded manipulation, one last trick to shake us. But by then, it didn't matter anymore. The fear had lost its grip. Ethan started smiling again, slowly rebuilding the pieces of his life. One evening, while cleaning the porch, I found another daisy growing through the cracks between the wooden planks. Wild, untouched. I stared at it for a long moment, then smiled. It no longer looked like a threat. It looked like survival. Months later, Ethan invited me to a small dinner at his new apartment. Nothing fancy, just home-cooked food, laughter, and a peace I hadn't felt in years. As I watched him talk to his coworkers, I saw the boy I'd raised, not the man who'd been broken. When everyone left, he hugged me tightly and said, "You know, Mom, I think I finally understand something. People can take your money, your trust, your peace, but they can't take your truth unless you hand it to them." I smiled. "You learned that the hard way, didn't you?" He chuckled softly. "Yeah, but I learned it from the best." As I drove home that night, the streets were quiet, the sky pale with stars. I realized that some stories don't end with victory. They end with clarity. The kind of clarity that doesn't erase pain but transforms it into strength. Lena's chapter in our lives was over, but the lessons she left behind weren't curses anymore. They were warnings, ones we'd learned to read. When I reached home, I took out the box with the cream dress. I unfolded it one last time, smoothing the fabric gently. Then I placed the daisy I'd found on the porch inside the box, closed the lid, and whispered, "Some wars end not when you win, but when you stop fighting." I tucked the box into the back of my closet, not as a reminder of pain, but of resilience. That night, before going to bed, I checked the laptop again. The flash drive had been returned by the police after analysis, empty, wiped clean. Whatever game Lena had started, it was done. The file was gone, her voice erased, and in that silence, I found peace. The next morning, Ethan sent me a message. "Mom, thank you for not giving up on me." I replied, "That's what mothers do. We wait, we warn, we forgive, but we never stop loving." As I looked out the window at the sunrise, I realized something powerful. Truth doesn't always come in big revelations. Sometimes it comes quietly, through time, through forgiveness, through standing up after being broken. It doesn't demand to be believed, it just is. Sometimes the people who destroy us aren't strangers. They're the ones we trust the most. But the same trust that breaks, you can also rebuild you if you choose to stand tall. Pain isn't the end of your story. It's just the beginning of your strength. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful, real-life-inspired stories that remind us how truth always finds its way home. Tell me in the comments, what would you do if someone you loved turned into your biggest lesson?